Welcome back, Double Teamed fam. It's just me here today. Cammie is actually technically in the room, but for this episode, it is just me. It is our first Vanilla Sunday episode. And on our stories, you guys always love when we do astrology content, especially the compatibility content. So I thought for this first episode, we'll dive a little bit more into that, because when it comes to astrology compatibility, it's so much more than just the sun sign. And I think that's kind of like what everyone mainly looks at in terms of compatibility. But like, I mean, you'll see, actually I've seen a lot of, Geminis and Capricorns together. Like typically those two don't go together. So, when you have something like that, look at the moon sign, look at the Venus placement, look at the Mars, things like that. But before we get into that, let's rewind a little bit and kind of get into some astrology basics, astrology 101, if you will. So each sign has a modality and an element. So for example, we'll start with the elements. So you have water, fire, earth, and air. All the water signs are Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. All the earth signs are Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. The air signs are Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius. And the fire signs are Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo. So those are the elements. Now we'll go into the modality. So for the cardinal signs, which are like the leaders of the zodiac, you have Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. For the mutable signs, which are the malleable ones, you have Virgo, Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius. And then for the fixed signs, you have Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, and what am I missing? Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, and Leo, the fire sign. So each modality has each element, if that makes sense. So if you look at the modalities that I just mentioned, they all have one earth, one fire, one air, and one water sign. Okay, so now that we've covered that, if you want to look at you and your boo, or maybe you and your crush, pull up their astrology chart. For this, I know most of the time, you need the time of birth so you can get as accurate as you can with the rising. And that's great. However, not everyone has their birth time, and, or maybe not everyone, wants to ask for that information right away. So we'll just start with the birth date. And with that, usually you can have enough information to kind of see okay, am I going to have, good passion or good chemistry with this person? Are we going to have good communication? Are we both going to be really aligned emotionally? So, because, even though the planets do move, usually within the day, you get enough of an idea to kind of see, okay, this is kind of where we're compatible. The moon is the one that moves the quickest. So, because it's only in each sign for 2.5 days. And so a lot of times you'll have you'll see, that the moon changes on that day. And so that's when you need the time of birth, not only for the rising, but for the moon. But we won't use the moon as much, just in case, if you can't find the moon. But I'll mention a few of the moon ones as well. Anyways, going back to compatibility. So if you want to know where to pull up a chart, I know a lot of you use CoStar. There's nothing wrong with CoStar. It's just not my favorite. There are better sources to use. I would, if I were you can download the Pattern app. That one's really great for your chart at least. And it'll I think it's very accurate. You can go to Cafe Astrology. You can go to AstroSeek. Any of those websites are really good. I don't believe any of those have apps. For apps, I use Ephemeris, but you have to be really familiar with the wheel if you're using Ephemeris. I'm trying to think of some other really good ones. Cafe Astrology actually also does this really dope compatibility report, which I really like. So if you ever want to look at that, you can use that. Okay. So if you've got both of your charts, and whether this is a new connection, someone already in your life, here are some of the things that you can look for to see how compatible you guys are. And I do this all the time, so no shame in the astrology compatibility game. Anyways, So obviously one that people always go to is sun compatibility, and that's the easiest, especially if you weren't born on like a cusp day, you know. And actually here, I'll backtrack one little bit more. Let me tell you what is compatible. So for example, within the elements, obviously like each element within themselves is going to be compatible. So like air signs plus air signs, fire plus fire, water plus water, earth plus earth. And then you also have the ones that are like complement each other. So water and earth and fire and air. Those all go really great. Now, of course, you can have like water and fire. That's usually pretty spicy. Or air and earth. That's actually a lot more grounding than you think it would be. But anyways, that's beside the point. And then for modality, anytime they're within the same modality, it creates what's called a square. So for example, all the modalities together square each other. Squares aren't bad. It just means that it causes a little bit of friction. So for example, if you have like a Gemini and a Pisces, that can be, actually, with that one, I would say that's an interesting combo, but they do square each other. So there is going to be kind of that spark there, that tension. So in one form or another, there's some chemistry or compatibility there. Or if they're, for example, you have all the sister signs, which are basically the ones that are opposite of each other. And even though they oppose and, you know, they can butt heads, like they are the sister signs. So that can be really nice energy to work with. And for that, it would be Aries and Libra, Taurus and Scorpio, Gemini and Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn, Virgo, Pisces, Leo, Aquarius. I think that's it. Yeah, those are all the sister signs. I think that covers all 12. Anyways, so back to sun. So for example, if you're both air suns, a Gemini and an Aquarius, that's super compatible. If you're both fire suns, Leo and Aries, that can be really compatible. Now, if, for example, you're complementing elements, so earth plus water, that's compatible. And that can go for like pretty much all the sun signs. And that's kind of typically what people look for. Now, if you want to get a little bit more into it, when you pull up that chart, look for the Venus placement. Venus is going to look like a circle with a little cross coming out underneath it. Anytime you have Sun and Venus in either the same element or the same sign, that is super nice energy to work with. And that can like mean long term, because Venus represents love, beauty, pleasure, you know, how we like to experience pleasure in life. And then Sun is like our vitality, our life force. It represents like our whole self. You know, think of it like the sun is like the center of the solar system. So like the sun is our core. Anyways, so anytime you have a Venus placement that is in the same sign or in a complementing sign as the sun placement, that can be really nice. So for example, if you have a Libra Venus and a Gemini sun, super nice. Love that. Actually, I'm trying to think. One of my lovers, I have a Libra sun. He has a Gemini Venus. Really nice. We got along super well. We both like the bougie things. We have great communication. Those are some good examples. Or one of my favorite combos, if it's a Taurus sun with a Scorpio Venus, ooh, super spicy. So Sun Venus compatibility is really nice. Now, if you have Sun Mercury compatibility, you'll probably think alike. You'll have really good conversation, have very in-depth conversation. Obviously, the signs can like affect like kind of how, you know, communication comes about or how you go about communication, those kind of things. I really like when you have Mercuries in the same sign. For example, anytime I've met someone that also has a Scorpio Mercury the same way that I do, like very good conversation. We're always like really aligned in that and like are just able to like connect mentally really easily. If you have Mercury and Venus in either the same sign or complementing signs, that can be really nice. So for example, a Aquarius Venus with let's see, Aquarius is an air sign. Ooh, with like a Sag Mercury. That would probably make for some really fun, interesting, maybe even kind of kinky conversation. I really like that one. So, like I said, anytime you have like the Sun or Venus, Mercury placements, look for complementing signs or the same sign. Now let's move into Mars. Mars is a little bit interesting because it is a malefic, as they call it in astrology. So like where Venus is a benefic, meaning it's like a good thing, it brings good energy. Mars is considered a malefic, which means it can bring a little tougher energy to work with. Mercury is kind of neutral, and I think Mercury incompatibility is like really easy to work with because it does represent like our mind, our communication, how we think, how we process information, that kind of thing. So Mercury's a little bit neutral, but Mars can be an interesting placement to use in compatibility. So for example, say your Mars, well, Mars can be fun too. So for example, say your Mars is in the same sign as someone's moon. You will probably have really great sex together, like great passion, great chemistry. But when you argue, you're gonna butt heads. It's gonna be interesting. I mean, like it might not be too bad. It can kind of depend on the placements. For example, I have a Scorpio Mars. A watery Mars is always very intense, I think. Mars in a fire sign is also really intense. Mars in an earth sign is super chill. Usually Mars in an air sign can be kind of, I don't want to say the word, not aloof. Mars in an air sign usually needs direction. Anyways, but Mars in a fire sign or Mars in a water sign, spicy. So as a Scorpio Mars, anytime that I've met someone with like a Scorpio moon, love. Or any earth moons, I get along with earth moons really well, like Taurus moon. Trying to think. I've dated a lot of Aquarius moons. My ex-husband was an Aquarius moon. And then I have a lot of really good friendships with Aquarius moons. And I think that's because it squares my Mars. So like even though there's that tension, and even though it can sometimes be a little intense, it can also make for like a lot of like, think like banter or like kind of like that really fun, spicy energy that you can find with someone. So Mars incompatibility can be interesting, especially when you look at like the signs that they're in. So like I find, for example, anytime Mars is in an earth sign, even though it is more chill with those people, like if things start to really mount and build, like they'll kind of sweep it under the rug, but then it'll be kind of like an eruption. Think like something, really like building up until it finally hits its peak. It can be kind of intense. So yeah, if you're looking for Mars, if you're looking at Mars in the chart, just know that's how you'll argue with someone, kind of like fight with someone in a way, but also, passion, chemistry, sex, all of those things. I really like Venus Mars compatibility. I think that's really fun. So like Mars and Moon is fun, spicy. Moon represents our emotions. Mars is like how we bring energy into it. So when those two clash, it's intense. But then when you have like Venus and Mars together, that's like the feminine and the masculine in the chart. And so, for example, if they're in the same sign, especially if like you're the female and they're the male and it's their Mars and your Venus, love that incompatibility. So whether they're in the same sign or complementing signs. So say, for example, you have a Leo Venus and they have a Sagittarius Mars or maybe a Libra Mars. Love that energy, because you're going to feel like you can really step into your feminine with this person, and they're going to feel like they can really step into their masculine with you. So that's really nice. Now, if it's flip-flopped, for example, so say you've got it's the man's Venus and then the woman's Mars, and those are the two that are complementing or that are, in the same sign. Now that's going to be interesting because they might bring out a little bit more of a masculine side out of you, and you might bring out more of a feminine side out of them. And like, that's not a bad thing. It just means that there's a little bit of a role reversal, and maybe you're kind of helping them step into that other energy. That's really nice. One thing also with Mars and Mercury, I think is interesting. I'm trying to think of some good examples. no, I've got a good one. Yeah. There was a guy that I dated, and he had a Virgo Mercury, and then I have a Scorpio Mars. So Virgo's earth, Scorpio is water. So technically those two elements complement each other. They form what's called a sextile. And I mean, sex was great. Communication was great. Dirty talk was great. That's one thing. If you have Mars, Mercury compatibility, the dirty talk in the bedroom is going to be out of this world. So anytime you have like their Mercury and your Mars, or your Mercury and their Mars, the dirty talk in the bedroom is going to be insane. So that can be really nice. But when you argue, good luck. I mean, it's not horrible. Like if any, like sextiles are nice, and especially because it's complementing, signs or whatever. But at the same time, like it also means like, and this is something in astrology, people are like, oh, sextiles and trines are good, and, oppositions and squares are bad, or conjunctions are great, like that's not always the case. Sometimes what sextiles and trines mean is that the energy flows easily. And then, and then in the others, maybe the energy just faces some like bumps along the road with squares and oppositions. So anyways, back to this Virgo Mars, or Virgo Mercury, Scorpio Mars thing. Like the fights were intense and the conversation would just flow, and we'd both be like on opposite sides. But like think about Scorpio and think about Virgo. Scorpio wants to get deep. Virgo is like, could kind of go either way, but it's an earth sign. It's a little bit stubborn. So it would just feel like, even though the conversation was flowing and the words were flowing and we were getting everything out there, there wasn't always a lot of like common ground. So, and that's one thing about compatibility. I think like astrologers, when they're studying the energy, or when you're looking at a chart, like you got to remember the signs too, not just the aspects, but like the signs and like kind of their general characteristics. So yeah, if you've got anything specific that you're finding in the charts, feel free to send it to me. I'll go over a couple more. So we've kind of covered Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars. Those are like the big six. Those are going to be what's called your personal planets. And in compatibility, like those are the ones you really want to look at. Uranus and Neptune don't play like a huge role. Now, for the other outer planets though, Saturn and Jupiter, those can play a big role. And those, because they move so slowly, where they are in the chart is like really easy to use with placements that are also like very in that sign. I'll give a few examples. Anytime you have Saturn and moon, your Saturn and someone else's moon, or vice versa, in the same sign, you're both going to feel as if like you take the relationship very seriously. Saturn is one of those planets where like it brings a lot of like order and like structure, and even though it's considered a malefic, it's one of the harder planets to work with. Like you really have to know how to work with Saturn energy. But I have found that anytime my moon is the same as someone else's Saturn, or vice versa, it brings about kind of a seriousness to the relationship. Like you both take each other seriously. So I think that's really nice. And when I see that in synastry, like that gives long term. So find your partner's Saturn or yours and see if the moon is either in the same sign, or I think sextiles could work too, or that's also nice energy. So for example, if they have Saturn in Aquarius, which if you're around 30, 31, your Saturn is probably in Aquarius. If they have an air moon, that's great. Or if they have a fire moon, that's going to be great. Or I'm trying to think of, for anyone after our age group, would be Saturn in Pisces. So if they have an earth moon, that's going to be really nice. Or if they have a water moon, that's going to be really nice. Or a moon in Pisces. So Saturn again is another one where like you really got to look at how they're aspecting each other and like what signs they're in. But if there is Saturn synastry, you'll probably kind of feel like it has more long-term potential with this person. Saturn and Venus is also really nice. What you don't want is Saturn and Mars, because those are the two malefics. Anytime Saturn and Mars touch, like it's not always the most fun. I'll give you an example. This year, Saturn and Mars were conjunct in Pisces as a transit. And Pisces rules the feet. Do you know how many people I knew that had foot injuries around that time? Roughly March? A lot. And I just remember when I saw all of that, I was like, I wonder why this is happening. I go look on the chart and I'm like, oh, duh. Saturn and Mars are both in Pisces. Last summer, Saturn and Mars were opposing each other. So Saturn was in Pisces and Mars was in Virgo. And for me, Virgo is in my 6th house, day to day. So it could have meant that like something happened in my day-to-day life that, you know, when those two kind of oppose each other, something kind of crazy, wild card, whatever. Tell me why on the week that they were like the most opposed to each other was when I got hit by a car walking my dogs, which is my day-to-day routine. So that's how transits can affect us. So yeah, Saturn and Mars is not a fun one in compatibility. So if you see, for example, that they have let's say Saturn is in Aquarius and your Mars is in Leo or Scorpio or Taurus, you will butt heads a lot. And when you fight, those arguments are going to be explosive and not in the fun way. Not in the fun way, especially if it's a Mars in Leo with a Saturn in Aquarius. Whew, I do not want to be in the same room. I do not want to be in the same room. So yeah, Saturn and Venus is good. Saturn and Moon is good. Saturn and Mars is not my favorite. It could make for really great makeup sex. It could, but it's not my favorite. Saturn and Mercury, that can be really nice. That one's going to give more, you might help each other kind of maybe have different perspectives, look at your thinking patterns differently, maybe bring more structure to your like day-to-day routine. So that could be if, for example, you have Saturn and Mercury in the same sign or complementing signs or sister signs, for example, then this could be someone that like in your day-to-day routine, you know, maybe they help you stay more motivated to go to the gym, or maybe they, you know, help you kind of find a healthier lifestyle, that kind of thing. That's how I would see those two play out. Because Mercury can also rule our like day-to-day, and Mercury is another fast-moving planet. So that one changes signs every like 20 days, and it does go retrograde about 4 times a year. Anyways, so that's Saturn in compatibility. It's not a bad one. Sun and Saturn is nice too. So for example, if you have Saturn in Pisces and your sun is like a Virgo or a Scorpio or a Cancer, like any of the water signs, or Pisces, I think those are nice. If it was, for example, like a Leo sun with a Saturn in Pisces, that would be hot. Actually, yeah, that would be really hot. Especially, it also depends on what houses you have it in. Like the houses is going to determine what area of life you'll really see that energy activated. But again, if you don't have the time of birth and you don't want to look at the houses, and I'm kind of keeping the houses out of it because this is just kind of like a little fun, quick, like just pull up the chart, see where those placements are, like in the sign that they're in, and then just like look for kind of these like key notes and key things to look for. Okay, and then there's Jupiter. Jupiter, I think, is so fun in a relationship when you have Jupiter compatibility. Jupiter stays in the same sign for about a year. So for example, if you're born like in 1993, you have your Jupiter in Libra. 94, it's going to start moving, I think, into Scorpio. But it stays in each sign for about a year. It does retrograde usually for a few months. Typically towards the fall. And then, it wraps up each year. Anyways, Jupiter is a planet of expansion. It's a planet of luck and abundance. So anytime you have like any of your personal planets touching your partner's Jupiter, or like trining, like they're in the same element, or even in, the same modality, sister signs, whatever it may be, that can be really nice energy. And one of the things that I can think of is, for example, I dated this guy. His Venus was on my Jupiter, and my Venus was on his Jupiter. And Venus can represent friends. for example. And I felt like I met so many amazing people through him, and like so many friendships came out of that connection. And it was really nice. And I have a Venus in Virgo in the 6th house, which can also represent friendships. So, or like, you know, people that we like interact with in our day to day. So his Jupiter on my Venus, he brought so many people into my life. And like all of my friends, you know, liked him, or, you know, in the way that they interacted with him and such. So Venus and Jupiter, those are the two benefics in astrology. So if Saturn and Mars are the malefics, you have Venus and Jupiter, which are the benefics. So those are the ones that are like considered to like bring all the good things, all the yummy things to your birth chart. So if you have Sun and Jupiter in the same sign, so for example, if they have a Libra Jupiter and you're a Libra Sun, that's going to be super nice energy. If anything, like you're going to feel as if they like make you feel like so good and like so yourself, and like just put you on this like pedestal, and you kind of feel like you're at the top of the world with them. Like that's going to be Sun and Jupiter compatibility. And Jupiter in the signs, like I'm trying to think for some of those that I really like. Jupiter in Pisces is nice. So Pisces, Jupiter, and a Sun and Jupiter, or Sun in Pisces. Jupiter in, let's see, it's ruled by Pisces. Oh, Sagittarius. No, it's Sagittarius. It's exalted in Pisces. So Jupiter in Sag with the Sag Sun. Love that energy. Anything that's expansive. So like the fire signs, for example, are expansive. Jupiter likes to be in those signs. So yeah, Sun and Jupiter compatibility. And then Jupiter and Venus, like in that example I was giving earlier, is really nice. That's going to feel as if like they bring a lot of pleasure. They're going to expand your social circles. They're going to, you're probably going to have really great sex. They're going to make you feel very like just beautiful. The guy that I was saying his Venus was on my Jupiter, I felt so beautiful with him. The way he complimented me, the way that like we were together in the bedroom, and like the way that he would like look at me, I always felt so beautiful around him. Like that is super nice. Jupiter and Mars is going to make for some interesting arguments, but that's also like someone that's going to make you feel very motivated career wise, because Mars is also like where we put our energy like career wise, and Jupiter, depending on where it is in your chart, you know, it's one that will typically hopefully affect our careers as well. So that one I think can be a really good placement for like expanding, you know, your side projects, your hobbies, your career, all those things. Jupiter and Mercury together, that's another one. Great for career, especially like if you're in anything social media related. If you have a partner that has a Jupiter in same sign, or like the, you know, complementing sign as you, they're going to really help you kind of like step more into the energy of like what you're putting into your like writing, you know, social media, work, all of that. I'm trying to think, what are the other ones? Oh, Jupiter and Moon. But that gotta watch out for, because that might feel as if like any emotional issues that you have, or any emotional traumas that you're working through, they might really expand all of that. Remember, expansion doesn't always mean great. Sometimes it means it just like makes it bigger, and suddenly you've got like a, you know, bigger issue on your plate. So anyways, that kind of wraps up all the planets that I wanted to go over. So yeah, look at your chart with you and your boo. See if any of those points touch, or are in the same sign, or are in, you know, complementing signs, whatever. And you know, I love this stuff. We do these on our story sometimes. So yeah, feel free to send me some DMs if you've got specific placements that you're curious about. Cafe Astrology has great sources, and so does Google in general. So hope you guys enjoyed this first Vanilla Sunday episode. We'll probably cover astrology quite a bit with me. And yeah, we'll see you next time.